this Tyreek Hill trade today, Justin. I don't think too many people saw it coming, although maybe you knew that he wanted out of KC. Your thoughts on him now being a Miami Dolphin?
I don't understand it, man. It's a bad move for Tyreek Hill to go away from Patrick Mahomes. We've seen this in the past with, let's say, Randy Moss going to random teams with quarterbacks that weren't very good. So if I'm Hill, I would want to stay tied into Mahomes for as long as possible. So in my mind, I don't understand. I get you want to get paid, but we've seen this too often, Roddy. Guys want to get paid and they leave and it doesn't end up working out. And I don't think they make as much money in the long run.
Yeah, well, it's interesting following the situation down here in South Florida because, as I was saying earlier, the Dolphins vowed to get Tua some weapons. So Tyreek is one. They already have Waddle, and they're looking for a running back in the defense. They're pretty happy with, as our good friend Sam McGuavin just re-signed here with Miami. So they're very excited with this trade today here. CFL Newsman, 3downnation.com is, of course, Canada's premier source for CFL news and all of Canadian football. What's popping this week, man? What's on your radar?
To me, the biggest news in Canadian football right now is Trey Ford, the University of Waterloo quarterback who won the Crichton a year ago, drawing legitimate NFL interest, Roddy. And there has not been a quarterback from a Canadian university sign a contract with an NFL team since the 1980s. So we're talking about an unprecedented situation. He produced or had a great pro day down at the University of Buffalo in front of over 10 NFL teams. And there's a lot of intrigue and interest in him, teams doing their background research. And when I say teams, I'm talking NFL teams. So there's some people that feel like, there's a small chance he could go in the back part of the draft, maybe the later round, 6th or 7th round potentially. But based on what I'm hearing in the level of interest, it seems like there's a real chance for him to sign an undrafted free agent contract, which might be the best scenario overall, because then he can pick the team and look at the depth chart and see who's actually going to develop him, who's going to actually be serious about his long-term prospects in the NFL, because that's going to be very key. But the interest is legitimate, and in my mind, this is a massive story that needs more coverage.
Well, you're providing it. And to be honest with you, it's interesting. This is the conundrum that comes up every year for the CFL draft, for the teams and for those that follow it. Where do you draft? Because Jesse Luketa, the linebacker, where's he at Penn State? He's a number one overall. Is it Penn State? He's number one overall pick for the CFL draft, but he's getting tons of NFL interest too, man. This is difficult times for CFL teams as they approach the draft this spring in terms of who's going to be available.
Yeah, it makes it tricky, and that's always interesting about the CFL draft. But you mentioned Luketa there, who didn't really pop off in terms of testing. That wasn't expected. He's better when you put the tape on. So he's a guy that I think should go in the NFL draft. I mean, anything can happen, but he's a versatile guy, fits the NFL style of play, especially on defense right now. And the other main guy to keep an eye on in terms of the NFL draft in Canadians is John Mechie Jr. He's a guy that was a standout at the University of Alabama, won a national championship there with the Crimson Tide, tore his ACL in the SEC championship game. And you could argue maybe he would have been one of the guys to help put the Crimson Tide over the top in the Natty against Georgia. Of course, the Bulldogs end up going and winning that game. But Mechie Jr. is a real intriguing prospect. I think a guy that's firmly in the mid-rounds. And if he didn't have this ACL knee injury, would be a guy that's maybe going in the top couple of rounds. So those are the names to keep an eye on right now in terms of Canadians in the NFL draft process.
Justin Dunk with us from 3downnation.com. I'm going to read a comment here. I don't know if you want to dive into it or not. Darren in Utah says, does Justin think the new owners and executives in Edmonton, BC, and the efforts in Ottawa signal an effort to make the CFL more relevant in the offseason like the NFL? Do you have a thought on that?
Yes, I definitely do. And I think what Ottawa is doing is great with the Behind the R documentary that they're putting on. That's something that every team needs to look at. And especially with Victor Cui in Edmonton and Amar Doman, the owner in BC, they're really putting the game up. And they're showing the rest of the teams that, hey, we mean business. We're here to compete in the offseason too. We want to keep our teams in the news and interesting and have fans engage and perhaps, dare I say, even engage new fans and put marketing money into the product that they want the fans to come out and pay to see. So I think what Kui and Doman are doing is great. And also the shift that Ottawa has made in opening themselves up. And I think it's definitely going to help those teams individually, but also raise the level around the league. Otherwise, those teams are going to lag behind.
Well, I hope so. But Justin, you and I have had talks for years. I've literally been on my knees for years begging them to meet us halfway and be relevant in the off season. And not only would they not do it, but they were angry that I was trying. So I'm over it and say good luck. Because no. Because just because these few markets are doing it doesn't mean the rest do. But anyways, what about the 4 down talk? Because Arash, to use our term, put his balls on the table with his report here last week about the 4 down thing, and a lot of people summarily downplaying it or even denying it. What is your take on this? Where's it coming from?
Well, let's look at this first of all, and that's what Mr. Medani does, right? He brings you the facts, good, bad, or indifferent, and people just ultimately don't like the truth. So his report needs to stand on its own. He's a legitimate source, and I know some of the Twitter trolls out there like to bash him online, but if Medani's saying it, it's true. All right. So Genius Sports is not going to come out and say in a statement that they want to push the CFL to go to 4 downs, right? That would ultimately mean that the large base of the CFL fan base right now would hate them right off the jump. So they're not going to say that. Now, there is legitimately to what is going on here. There have been talks behind the scenes of 4 downs, and there have been teams across the league that have been asked to provide reports for various things in terms of the gameplay, and 4 downs was one of them. So the only way that I can see this as a bit of a stroke of genius from the league is to keep them in the conversation in March and April, which are traditionally 2 of the ultra dead months in the off season. So from my perspective, if that's the case, it's smart. But if I'm Randy Ambrosie, the commissioner, he needs to be very careful here. I think he needs to come out and say where he stands on this issue and potentially even guarantee that the league won't go to 3 downs, or fans across the country and around the world are going to start calling for his head and a new commissioner, because that's how contentious this issue is. They could lose their hardcore fan base if they do decide to go to 4 downs, Roddy. You know it.
A lot of people are calling for his head now. Let's just say it. 5 years from now, is the CFL playing 3 downs or 4 downs, or is it even around at all?
Ooh, well, there's so much to unpack there. My goodness. I hope they're still playing 3 downs, but it depends on a number of factors here. And I think Genius Sports is going to have a say. And also what's going on, way behind the scenes with the XFL and their partnership with the NFL, or is there something at play there potentially with the CFL? That's just pure speculation on my point. But I think to what you said lastly there, Roddy, the CFL needs to be careful here that if they switch to 4 downs, they're not just the second best football league in the world anymore playing 4 downs. They're definitely the third best, because the NCAA is about to, if it already hasn't turned into a professional league. And they rule the weekends down there. Saturday's NCAA, as you know. Sunday is the NFL. Then you even have Friday nights where it's high school football. There's a bunch of college games on that night as well. The NFL obviously is Thursday night football and Monday night football. So if you go to 4 downs right away, you're the third worst league. Whether or not people want to agree with that, that's how it's going to be viewed. And that's already part of the CFL's issue right now, is an inferiority complex, because the people that don't follow the CFL feel like it's way behind the NFL. So they need to be careful here, and they need Doman and Kui and Mark Gowdy and guys like this pushing the CFL forward. Otherwise, as you mentioned, the future could be really uncertain.
Wonderful report. We need to do this more. Always good to see you, Justin. Keep in touch, my friend. Thanks for this.
Yeah, man. Keep enjoying working on the tan down there, buddy.
Thank you, man. 3downnation.com's Justin Dunk. I was thinking today, finally got some sun on this skin. Feels good. Vitamin D. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of the Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.